Mark Ramsey, and you are looking at the one and only David Hall. David Hall, of course, an icon of news and talk radio, Los Angeles, right? KFI, David.
That's right.
KABC.
KNX.
Lots of it. KNX. Lots of other things with K's and P's and so on.
Right.
David, you are near the center of the world of the news and talk format. What is the shape of news and talk right now?
It's pretty narrow. It's a pretty narrow shape right now. There's not a lot of experimenting. There aren't a lot of new shows. There aren't a lot of, it used to, the format used to be crazy weekend shows, 9 of which would fail miserably, and 1 of which would go on to be Bill Handel or Dr. Laura or Rush Limbaugh or Howard Stern or whatever, right? There's not any of that anymore. It's too narrow, number one. The other way in which it's too narrow, number two, is somehow talk programmers got it into their mind that talk radio has to be conservative and only conservative, and that's all there is to it. Even though KGO is not, and WGN is not, and WOR is not, and Cairo in Seattle is not, and KTAR in Phoenix is not, KFI is not necessarily. I mean, there are huge radio stations that aren't all conservative all the time that do really well, yet programmers feel like it has to be all conservative all the time.
Okay, well,
and that really narrows
let's talk about that for a second, because how do you break out of that, right ghetto into a broader, more appealing, but also, appealing world?
You put on somebody who's more entertaining. You put on somebody who's a natural student of history, who can just explain things, put things into perspective. Maybe they come from more right of center. Maybe they come from more left of center. I don't think it matters. I think, especially now with the economy and jobs and everything that's going on in the world, I think if you just put on somebody on the radio who can have fun, and they're smart, and they have a really good sense of things, of how things work, and they take whatever it is going on, the economy or Obama or healthcare, whatever, and they just make it make sense, tell a good story, entertain you, get your attention, and in the meantime, you learn something from them, and you go, wow, I hadn't really thought about that before. I think that's what you have to do, and I think there's not a lot of that anymore. That's really lacking. Everything's Obama's fault.
So when how do you find, if you were looking right now for a talent, for the next big blogs. What do you mean?
You see, it's interesting. There are so many people, you look in the blogosphere, there are so many people who express so much strong opinion, and they have so much to say, and they're so creative about it, and it's the only outlet they have, because they can't just get a job in radio. That probably hasn't even dawned on them to get a job in talk radio, right? They're not on TV, so they just sit there at home. Nobody's paying them to do it, of course. They just sit there at home and they express their opinion, and some of them are creative and very smart, very intelligent, very interesting. That's where I would go.
Now, if talent came to you and said, David, help me be a better news talk talent, what advice do you give to me?
Well, it really depends on who they are and what their strengths are. I believe everybody's got their strengths, everybody's got their weaknesses. As a PD, as a talent coach, I've always really kind of thought of myself as somebody who simply helps them focus on their strengths, and then I keep them from shooting themselves in the foot, which we're all want to do, right? That's the number one thing. The number two thing is, they really have to bring something to the table. They really have to be able to explain things in a way that nobody else is explaining. And you listen to it and you go, wow, I'd never thought of that in a million years. Wow. If I can get a host to do that, even once an hour, that's a big thing. To do that every segment, every hour, every day is absolutely out of the park. Then, if they can do that in a way that's pretty entertaining, and so you're laughing while you're saying, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that on the radio, but wow, that's pretty cool, that's some good shit. That's it right there. Everything I do is to try to just get a host to that point.
Can you teach chemistry?
No. All you can do is get people to be comfortable enough in their own skin, comfortable enough with where they are and who they are and all of that, and then try to, get that in sync with another person. All you can do is get people to that level of comfort, which I do think is possible. I mean, we're all at times, stiff and awkward, and at times we all, just kind of let the hair down, and you can't make that happen.
You said that maybe some less right content would be an opportunity for NewsTalk going forward. I mean, where do you see NewsTalk headed in the absence of that, or where do you see NewsTalk headed, period? My observation is that the format's getting older, that AM, of course, is getting older, that the talents are getting older.
Great question.
It's a little worrisome, isn't it?
Yeah, I see it headed for irrelevance if NewsTalk doesn't do that, and I'll tell you why. We don't really own the only medium anymore, right? It used to be, if you know the expression of opinion, it was the editorial of the newspaper and us. It's not that anymore. I mean, nobody reads the editorials of the newspapers anymore, except for talk show hosts, unfortunately, right? But with YouTube and with blogs and with podcasts and everything else, it's all out there anyway. It's all going to be out there anyway, and it's going to be out there more and more, and people are only going to get better at it over time. Bloggers are going to get better at the writing. Podcasters are going to, slowly figure out all the elements that makes a good talk show and put it into a good podcast, and then you won't even need the transmitter or the 50,000 watts to do the talk show anymore. So if talk radio stays right, solely focused on right wing as it has been, it's going to talk itself right into obsolescence, I think, while everyone is doing something else.
Why do you think that talk radio, news talk in particular, with so many opportunities in digital spaces, has been so slow to gravitate to those opportunities? Video, podcast. Granted, we do podcasts, but we don't do highlights. We don't do that much video. There's not that much interaction. Most video is a shot of a mic in a studio. Why aren't we embracing these tools more?
I think it's because we come from, we're mass media. We are the ultimate definition of mass media. So if you think about what podcasting is, because it's micro media, it's micro targeting, right? You think about what podcasting is, we're coming from the furthest back to try to get there and to understand it and to make it make sense, right? So some guy who's got a lot to say and he's upset with the world and he wants to express himself is a lot closer to just opening up a recorder or the voice notes on his iPhone or whatever and just speaking into it and putting it over the internet or taping it and having it be on YouTube than somebody who's used to a cume of a million people. Our problem is, and it's a huge problem, we're used to a cume of a million people. I'm used to reaching a million people I'm never going to meet, I'm never going to hear from, they're never going to call. If I'm really lucky, 50 of them will show up for my food show remote on the weekend, right? But there are a million of them, supposedly. That's who I'm used to having to try to satisfy. And to think of, maybe I do a podcast that gets a couple thousand people and I can't sell it, and the sales department can't sell it, and my manager just doesn't care about it because we can't sell it. That's a pretty long way to go for people in talk programming to get to make that distance.
Mm-hmm. Is there a but at the end of that sentence?
Well, it's happening anyway, and I think
That's
and
the key,
it's gonna
right?
and it's gonna happen anyway. So you just have to you have to. I think what you have to do is just realize that the numbers are going to be different, and you have to be very creative in thinking about how to sell it and monetize it, and realize it's not going to be as easy, and it's not going to happen as fast, because all those channels for selling radio have been built in now for 50 years with the direct business and the endorsements and the advertising agencies and those godforsaken infomercials. That's all been around for 50 years, right? So it's like you want to buy an infomercial, you know where to go and who to buy, and there's already a rate for that. You want to do a podcast that gets a couple thousand people to listen, there isn't really a rate for that yet. Nobody's really figured that out yet.
So some innovations are required, obviously, right?
On both sides, on the business side and the programming side.
Now,
the other thing about that,
yeah.
Unfortunately, when radio took that crazy turn in 1996 with consolidation, and now it's almost all public. And it used to be, and I used to work for Cox, so I worked for a private company that went public, and I've worked for all public companies since then. And those of us who've been around that long know there's a huge difference between being with a private company that only worries about year to year. Where was KFI last year? Where is it this year? Where is it next year? And now, of course, it's all where was KFI last month and this month and next month. And so when you're launching a podcast and you only have 2,000 or 5,000 or even 10,000 people listen to it, how on earth are you ever going to monetize it last month to this month to next month? It should be like the way radio used to be, where it's, you have 10,000 people this year, how many do you have next year, and how do we have it monetized by next year? But we don't do that.
Now, you work with talk shows, talents, stations across the world.
Yep.
In your work in other countries in particular, has there been any kind of insight that has surprised you after all your years in the U.S. doing what you've done here? Have you learned anything in other countries that you can really say, wow, that's a new one on me?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Two things. First of all, and this is just kind of an aside, one of the crazy things about talk radio outside of the United States, I think anywhere outside of American borders, it's always one election away from non-existence. And in any country I've worked in, you know, there's a new president, there's a new party, there's a new coalition, which it often is in a lot of countries, and they decide they don't like the cacophony of dissent, and off it goes, and you're done. And then all of a sudden you're in the news business or you're out of business, and you're not in the opinion business anymore. And then on the other side, here's a guy who wants to be populist, and he's kind of the rebel, and the current government is the institution, and he wants to be the non-institutional guy. Talk radio is the greatest thing ever, and free speech, and blah, blah, blah. So the one thing is, talk radio it's really uniquely American in that way, where it's just never in danger from an election or the government or, you know, whatever. The other thing that I guess has surprised me is the lack of research done in talk radio lately, the last few years, in the U.S. compared to out of the U.S. Out of the U.S., a lot more research is done. People really want to know more hear from their audience, and as their audience is changing and using other media and other devices and other things, they want to know about that, and it's like they want the collaboration of their audience as they figure out how to get into those other media, and they figure out how to retool even what they do on the radio. And I think there's less of that than ever in the United States. We just kind of guess. We just kind of guess what you might want for a podcast. We guess what you might want for a morning show. If the morning show isn't doing right, we guess it's because he's doing this or not doing this. We no longer collaborate with the audience together try to figure out what's going on there.
That's an interesting way to put it.
And they still do that in all other countries that I work in.
Collaborating with the audience. I like the way you put that.
Yeah.
David Hall, of course, consults talk stations, news stations, and talents worldwide. David, if anybody wants more information, what do they do?
david.g.hall@mac.com. david.g.hall@mac.com.
Repeat it twice. And repeat the phone number 4 times. David, thank you very much.
All right, Mark, thank you.